Do you hate Phase 7 of Amascut? Because I do as well. Hi everyone, this guide will primarily focus on Phase 7 of Amascut since everything there happens so fast and it's a long grind to even get to Phase 7. This guide will break down the mechanics portion of the fight and also focus on the positioning of some of the mechanics regardless of whatever Enrage you're on. Starting in Phase 7, I want to spend a lot of time on breaking down how the arena looks. In the best case scenario, instead of going to the far corners, you should stand in the corners highlighted in red. This is because for the square glyph mechanics like Nakatra, you can cover 4 of the tiles by walking into it, and if all 4 tiles are unsafe, that means the square on the other side is also safe, which you can surge across. If it helps, here is an example of me employing this strategy. Unlike Nakatra though, there isn't a golden tile to help you guide where this spot is, so this is what I do to remember them. For the southern corners, I try to remember under the neck of the dog and under the mouth of the feline. For the northern spot, it's the second lower pointy thing of the Tumikin symbol. If it helps, I'll show you the spots by running towards them in-game. Now of course if you're playing on min graphics, this won't be helpful, so you'll have to remember which spot is it on your own on low enrages. In short, at the start of the phase, immediately dive into the corner spots and you can still provoke her safely. During this part of the phase, you cannot really do any damage to her, so don't go thinking you can dump DPS. Now let's talk about the most important thing to do during the start of Phase 7. After going to the appropriate spots as previously discussed, the only thing she does is hit you with some magic autos, so pray mage. Then she will call one of the desert gods. When she calls a statue, you have to provoke her. For example, she called Scabarus and I had to provoke her because I was on the corner of Scabarus statue. When you provoke, make sure to use a defensive like Disruption Shield or Resonance or you will get killed. If you fail to provoke, you're pretty much almost guaranteed to fail the kill. Tumikin will lose half of his life, everyone gets hit with a lot of damage, and there's green orbs that explodes that will spawn, and your knees will be bent. Depending on the statue she chooses, if you get hit, she will heal from the damage everyone takes, pretty much just DPS her. If you get Amakin, someone will be marked with the mark of Amakin, which if you're familiar with it from Phase 2, you have to pass it to someone else before the stacks build up too high, which would insta-kill you in higher enrages. If you get Crondis, crocodile demons will spawn in the adjacent corners and you will have to deal with them. I highly recommend getting rid of them as soon as possible, especially in higher enrages. Ideally, if you see Crondis called, the player standing at Amakin should go to the adjacent corners to kill them. This is because they hit like a truck, they can drain your adrenaline gain, and also cause you to misclick them. And for those using Necromancy, the Death Skulls can bounce off of them which will reflect damage back at them, which will hurt. And finally, everyone's favorite statue, Scabarus. Scarabs from Phase 4 will spawn on the adjacent corners of Scabarus statue, and you need to throw 3 of them at Amascut to damage her. The player standing at head statue should go to one of the adjacent corners to help throw the scarabs when Scabarus is called. After provoking her, a buff will appear in your buff bar, and you have 25 seconds to DPS her before you have to repeat the provoking part of the phase. For anyone wondering, yes, she can repeat the same statue twice, so it's possible to get 2 Scabarus twice in a row. After provoking, she will be stunned briefly before starting to shove mechanics at us. Now's the time to do DPS. She will not use auto attacks during this phase, but instead she will be using the colored bomb mechanics from previous phases, where your screen turns a certain color which will tell you which style she will attack you with. If she says something about your soul being weak, it's deflect magic, but it's easy to confuse this with someone dying as well. If she says something about suffering, it's deflect range. If she says something about strength, it's deflect melee. At higher enrages, you will need defenses to greatly reduce their damage since they hit hard even through prayer. For the glyphs, I already previously covered the square glyph mechanic where you use that specific spot to walk the tiles. Getting hit by them will give you corruption stacks, which increases the damage you take, and also knock out your defenses. At higher enrages, it becomes very hard to react. I decided to put these side by side to see how fast they really are. There is also the Ring of Waves mechanic that I'm sure everyone loves. However, unlike Nakatra, the way you deal with it is different. I have mapped out the wave mechanic and its borders. As you can see, two of the inner waves overlap with the red corner spots, meaning you have a 50-50 chance that the spot you're standing on is already covered by the red corner spot strategy, and if none of them must save, then it's one of the outer waves. It can be hard to deal with because the blue color bombs combined with the blue telegraphs is hard to look at, especially when comparing it to the speed of 2k. Alternatively, you can face tank it with Vidpon if that Vidpon isn't on cooldown. The biggest problem I have is while she usually tends to use at least 3 color bombs per statue, she either chooses to use the square glyph mechanic or the wave mechanic, so it's hard to predict which one she would choose to use. And with that, that is the end of this positional guide on Phase 7. It would not be easy. I've died many times here on the way to 2k because everything just happens too fast for my brain to keep up. I would highly recommend Ring of Death to clutch kills, especially 2k ones, because that's exactly what happened with me. I hope this guide will help you better position yourself in Phase 7 arena. I already hated Cronus because of a certain quest called Crocodile Tears. After doing 2k Enrage, my new least favorite desert god is now Scabarus. Subscribe if this helped, and bye bye.